The Bank of Japan unveiling aggressive monetary policy. Joining us now to talk more about this, Joe Trevisani, Worldwide Markets Chief Market Strategist at the CME this morning. Joe Kinahan, I don't know. I think I could have figured this out in quicker than 20 years. Couldn't you? I mean, is it that easy to do this?
Apparently it is, because they keep doing the same thing over and over again.
I thought they didn't do this before, to this extent.
Not to this extent, but as for the facts of what they're doing and how they're going about doing it and what they're trying to do, they've done this a dozen times in the past.
Why hasn't it worked?
Because monetary stimulus is not a very effective way of boosting an economy. And if you have an economy which is tilting downward, then it's not even a very effective way of boosting inflation. I mean, we've seen that in our country right here. The Fed has been pouring money out, and inflation hasn't moved because there's really no inflation demand. There's nothing pulling it out from the banking system out into the economy to boost prices, to make it move.
Carrie and Joji's point this morning when we talked to her is that the companies there have been so conservative,
right.
You can't change their mindset and convince them to spend that money.
That's correct. I mean, the Japanese economy has not performed well. The Japanese companies, even world-beating companies they used to be, Sony and others, have not really performed well. They haven't produced any new products. They're not out there at the cutting edge of a technology business such as Sony has, and so there isn't a lot of demand for the money that everyone's producing.
How do you change that? I mean, that's such a crazy problem to try and tackle and try.
It is very difficult. It goes to depths of the economy, really. You might always say the culture that central banks and their policies can't really reach. Now, the other side of that is Mr. Bernanke's point is that, well, if we hadn't done this, it would be worse. And that's a second line, kind of a secondary defense, and that much is probably true. Deflation would probably continue in Japan. It might even worsen if they don't do something. And deflation is a danger for the economy. So on that side, there's a positive reason for doing it, and perhaps there'll be a positive response from the economy.
The thing that we always wish that some of the problem areas in Europe, we wish that they had the ability to devalue their currencies, because that's the way it always works when you need to do something. This is a way for Japan basically to devalue the yen to make themselves more competitive. I mean, we want these countries in Europe to have that tool. Why do you say it's a tool that doesn't work? It's the one tool that we've been told does work. It worked in South America. It worked in Russia.
It does work, and it will work to some degree to devalue the yen. Now, if you look at the response this morning, the yen went down about 2.5 figures against the dollar. That it didn't even reach the level that it had reached before. It was above 96, went up to somewhere in 95. So the markets respect what they can do, but it isn't enough to make the economy move. I mean, Japan needs to do two things. They need a weaker yen to help their exports, but they also need products from the economy that the rest of the world wants to buy. The Koreans are doing a far better job, say, of exporting cars or developing cars that people actually want than the Japanese are at the moment, and that certainly goes with electronic products too. So yes, a weaker currency will help. There's no doubt about it. But it doesn't create the momentum within the economy.
Joe and Joe and Joe, three of them. We got three Joes. Kinahan, JJ. It's the day I got to call you JJ.
Kills you.
I don't like these doomsday scenarios, obviously, but North Korea, the stuff that it's saying. Let's say the worst case were to happen, and that they actually had a small nuclear device that they set off somewhere. I would think the VIX or that the markets would react violently to that. So we got the VIX at 14. Because it hasn't done anything, are we just totally, or is the market totally discounting that this actually happens?
I wouldn't say we're completely discounting because, again, it came from 12.5. And I know if you look 6 months ago, this is nothing. But actually, the VIX itself has had pretty good trading ranges intraday. We're having days of 30% trading ranges within the VIX. That being said, Joe, it is difficult to predict, what will happen in North Korea. You have seen over the last couple of days people coming in and buying some way out of the money calls, up to 2024 area.
Really?
For exactly a scenario
God
you might
forbid.
be talking about.
Where would it go? God forbid. What do you think a number would be on the VIX? 30?
Again, tough to predict. But I would certainly have to think it would go over 20, maybe 20 to 24. I think, Joe, what would be more important is you might see a one-day spike is how widespread, if something like that did happen, it was, and what our immediate reaction, along with the rest of the world's immediate reaction, would be. We'd have to see who would sort of align with North Korea, or if everybody would go hands off to them. If everybody goes hands off to them, I wouldn't see the VIX would continue. If for some reason another country kind of became their ally, it would be a lot worse scenario, and then you would look toward a 30. But again, that circumstance and what can happen is very difficult to predict overall. I think those that are smart, that have larger predictions, have done things to hedge themselves, not only for that, but for a lot of the things that are going on right now, particularly if they're long stocks, because outside yesterday they've enjoyed a pretty good 2013.
Because, I mean, it's the unthinkable. I don't think anyone, for a long, long time, we've never thought one would be used again, really. I think, at least not by a normal country, and that's the problem.
They're not.
The evil, remember Bush? You said the three axes of evil.
Yeah.
And then remember the three? It was a pretty good guess. Iraq, Iran, and North Korea. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, it's been, it's been unthinkable. In my mind, I never thought it could never happen again. We could never let it happen again. And it's weird that now that we're talking about it again, we get a 14 on the VIX. I mean, obviously, the market doesn't believe it.
But Joe, if you think about it, look at all the times that during the Cold War, that people would arm up on both sides, and ultimately nothing would happen. I mean, God forbid.
It's a long time ago.
I understand, but history does repeat itself, and you can never. You're dealing with a little bit of a madman, so that's tough to predict. I mean, God forbid something does happen, but I think the market's kind of take on it is there may be a lot of grandstanding, but at the end of the day, people's better sense sort of prevails on what the long-term outcome would be for his country, and I don't think he's that crazy.
All right, dueling Joes. Three of us. Thank you, Joe Trevisani. Joe Kinahan, thanks. We'll see you.